guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shreya. I am a woman in tech. I make videos about tech, productivity, and life as a digital nomad. So today you guys have noticed a new face, Kajal, and I'm so excited to have her here. She has a YouTube channel. I have met her through social media, and she has great advice and insights to give you guys. So Kajal, would you love to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having me here, Shreya. Hey everyone, my name is Kajal and I'm also a YouTuber. I'm a robotics software engineer, and on my channel, I talk about robotics and how to get jobs in tech. As Shreya said, we met on social media, and here's a really good story. Shreya and I both actually worked in the same building and never met each other, and met over social media talking about our common experiences of working as a woman in tech.
And I will have all of Kajal's links down below so you can follow her. You can check out her video. So we're doing a part 1 of this video on her channel, and I will make sure to link that card right up there, and I hope you guys will check it out. So let's talk a little bit about negative feedback, and let's, I guess, dial it back right to what does negative feedback look like to you?
So, to me, negative feedback is when someone's coming to me, making me comfortable, and giving me feedback to actually help me.
Awesome. I would completely agree with that statement. I think when I think about negative feedback, it's someone who's hopefully looking out for me and is telling me places that I have to improve. And I would honestly go as far as to say that negative feedback is a good thing. And the reason why is because my hope for you guys is that you're always growing in your career. And if you're growing, chances are you're taking on new responsibilities, you're taking on new jobs, you're increasing your skill set. And the chance is you're not going to know everything about that new thing every single time right off the bat. There's no way. There's no human that can possibly do that. So someone that will give you negative feedback with the hope and intention of your growth is actually an absolute gift. And I would take that as that reframe, I guess. And by reframing something that normally we think of as negative into something that's more of an opportunity than anything else, I think that's what's really going to make all the difference in making your experience with this negative feedback go even further. So
yeah, I would
go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because with negative feedback, the very first thing that's going to happen is your emotions. Nobody likes to hear anything that they've not done well or something that they are lacking in. So, I guess the next step is about processing your emotions when you get this negative feedback. How do you go about with that, Shreya?
Sure. So completely agree with you. I am someone where one of my weaknesses is that sometimes I do wear my heart on my sleeve. So if I'm upset, it's a little bit visible. And I think one of the things as we grow and as we get bigger and better at our careers is being able to control that and take time to process that and then respond to it. And I actually have a series on Instagram called React Resiliently that I think some of you might recognize. But on that, the main theme is really when you're in a situation that you don't know what to do with, first, before you react, you want to take a moment to pause and think. So this is one of those situations where when you get negative feedback, just say thank you for the feedback or thank you for letting me know. And don't respond with any sort of kind of anger or any negative emotion. Just say thank you and move on. Later on that day, that week, you can take the time to introspect and realize whether or not how you want to go about handling it. But I would honestly recommend not to blow up at anyone right there and then. And going from here, I want to talk about how do you decide whether feedback is worth kind of altering what you do for? Because in my opinion, when you get negative feedback, quite often it's not always true, or it's not always a good idea to change yourself to amend to that negative feedback. So Kajal, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would completely agree with your first statement also that take the time to process. Anytime you're getting the feedback, say thank you and just take yourself away from that situation. Take the time to sort of run through your emotions and then look at, okay, what was being said and how it applies to you. With that being said, yes, every negative feedback or every feedback, you don't have to change that. I like to think of it as the 80-20 rule. Anything you do, you don't have to do 100% perfect. Changes that will improve you to the 80% capacity, then you don't have to worry about the 20% stuff. So, for example, if someone gives you feedback that, hey, you did a really good job, but if you do all of these 10 other things, then you could make it go from wow to amazing. And you have to check that, is it amazing even worth it? While wow itself is really good, it's completely fine. You don't have to make all of those changes just to make it reach to that 100 mark.
I completely agree. And I would go as far as to argue that a lot of the time we have so many responsibilities on our plate that the expectation is to just get things done. And taking something from that wow to amazing point doesn't always happen. It's not even an expectation. Um, and that's why it's important to kind of dissect that. Another point that I would add in terms of the seeing negative feedback is when you receive negative feedback, I think the first thing I would think when I'm trying to process is what is this person thinking about and where are they coming from? What is their perspective? Things that for me help me, things that have helped me in the past is thinking about, oh, okay, so if this was a coworker that gave this particular feedback, what do their goals look like? Where do they come from? What does their experience and background look like? And often what I notice is that their perception of a great programmer or their perception of a great manager or their perspective of a great whatever job it may be might not be the same as what your perspective of that great programmer or manager or whatever it may be. And if their feedback and their, recommendations for you don't match in line with what you want to do and the path that you have laid out for yourself, give yourself the freedom to just say thank you and move on. Don't even do anything about it. You don't have to spend your time fixing something to go in a direction that you don't even want to go in. And I think that was a mistake that I made a lot the first few times, is that if I ever got negative feedback, I would immediately apologize. I would immediately think, oh my gosh, no, I've been doing this all wrong. That's not true. A lot of the times it's coming from someone that is trying to mold me into something that I don't even want to be molded in myself. So that's something to be extremely cognizant of. And I think making that switch in mindset is when another level of growth comes. So Kajal, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And if you've had any experiences where you've gotten negative feedback that just didn't work for you.
I think I have a really good one. So this especially comes from people who are into software engineering and do pull requests. So after you've done your changes, so in general, in software engineering, you get tickets assigned where you're fixing a bug or adding a feature, and then you write your code and then you put in a pull request where someone reviews and then it gets merged to the main code. And a lot of times I would get comments wherein someone would say, hey, why did you name the variables like this? Or why would you create a particular function? Now, some of them, it makes sense to explain because they're trying to make sure that, it's being done in the most efficient manner. However, sometimes, as you mentioned, it's because they think of things in a certain perspective, and it's not always necessary for you to see that as well, especially with variable names. Sometimes I do get a lot of feedback with saying things like, hey, why do you have to write, these big variable names? And sometimes it makes sense. So I'd be like, yeah, okay, in this case, I can shorten it. And sometimes it's like, hey, I see your point where you don't want long variable names. But then at the same time, if I don't put that in, it is very easy to get confused. And then it's just a mess to anyone who's trying to read this code and make any future changes at any point. And I don't want to do that. So I'm just not gonna. And like you said, sometimes it makes sense to respond. Sometimes it'd be like, thank you, but I don't think it's necessary right now. And yeah, I think the one line that definitely helps with this is, it's a good point, it's not critical. This
Okay, I
really
love that.
helps. Instead of saying, so okay, here's another thing. This a mentor of mine said that anytime you use the word but, the other person instantly thinks you've not accepted their feedback or you're not listening to them. So don't use but, simply say it's important, it's not critical at the moment. And then that way you're not going to accept this negative feedback and move on.
That's right. I would totally agree. Thank you. That's a great point. I will add that to my toolkit as well. Let me ask you another question then. So let's go back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the video, where have you ever experienced someone that has decided to give you negative feedback kind of in the middle of a meeting in front of other people?
I have, and the mistake I made was getting angry. I didn't really use any negative words. I was still using cautious words and saying I would disagree with that or so on and so forth. But I was really angry, and you could see it on my face and you could see it in my emotions, and that didn't help. Here's what I took back from that situation. Anytime, yes, one, first learn to control your emotions, but that's not always possible. So the second smartest thing to do is walk away from that situation. You can always say things like, hey, this is getting into a discussion. You can always say things like, hey, this is not a fruitful discussion anymore. Let's take some time to think about it and meet again. And then just walk away from that situation. I wish I had done that, but a lesson for next time that,
Yeah.
if you're just angry and you can't take it, instead of trying to defend yourself or even say the right things, but with a really angry tone, just walk away and say, hey, I need to take a break.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with you. If you need a break, then by all means, I think at the end of the day, if you're doing some work angrily, you're more likely to create problems for yourself down the line than actually do something productive. So you might as well take a second to cool right back down. Um, so that's great. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that story. And I'm sorry that happened. It's great that you have some wonderful takeaways from the story, though.
Do you have any feedback story, any crazy feedback stories that you can share with our audience today?
Yes. So I have negative feedback stories as well as some crazy ones. Let me tell you about one that kind of stands out to me as crazy, borderline inappropriate. So, my first couple of years of work, I had a manager who was awesome. She would coddle me a little bit, and that was probably what I needed at the time. But one of the things that I think didn't exist there was boundaries. And this person decided to give me feedback saying, oh, if you want to grow, you should start dressing more formally. And that was interesting to me because as a tech workplace, we would be wearing t-shirts, jeans, leggings all the time. That was pretty much normal attire in the developer space. And she knew I wanted to move into management and leadership, but her main feedback for me was to dress more formally. And then she had some very specific and exact numbers as to how much each article of clothing should cost me. And that was a little bit invasive, in my opinion. And in that moment, I kind of immediately was like, oh no, like I've just been dressing inappropriately this whole time. Who's going to promote me? And then when I went back and thought about it, I realized, well, one, that was inappropriate. That was a little bit of an overstep, if anything. And two, I mean, if you see the videos of or any sort of article on like Zuckerberg or pretty much anyone in this tech world, that's not really the most important thing to work towards in becoming more established in one's profession, especially in tech. It's more on your skills, hard skills and soft skills, than anything else. So I made the decision for myself that that was just not something I was going to pursue at that time. I'm not the only one that gets invasive feedback, and culturally, we all get invasive feedback all the time. And this is one way, I guess, that I've handled it in the past is to just ideally say thank you for the feedback, or another way you could do it is say, maybe take a second to do a little bit of research and digging, see where they're coming from, try to understand, what makes you say that, or is there any specific examples where you've noticed that this could be improved? And with that research, you have a little bit more to reflect on. And hopefully it gives them a chance to kind of explain themselves as well. But I'm glad, Kajal, you haven't had an experience like that. I wouldn't really recommend seeking
I
one
would
out.
say, yeah, that was crazy. Telling you how much each piece of outfit should cost was borderline crazy. And yeah,
A little
as you said, in tech, nobody cares about what you wear. The one thing I did take away from the story of yours, and in general, I can say for myself as well, is when people give you this feedback, your emotions are going to be all over the place. And it's very difficult to think. It's and also it's about authority, right? Someone who's giving you feedback might be your manager or a senior colleague sometimes. So you do have a little bit of inferiority complex or a little bit of imposter syndrome. And on top of that, if you someone who's at an authoritative position gives you that, it instantly puts all of your emotions in havoc, and it's very difficult to think. So the best thing to do is take yourself out of that situation and think at a time and a place when you're a little comfortable and can think more clearly.
Exactly. And I think you're right, Kajal. Every time my brain will tell me that, oh, now that this person's given me negative feedback, they're in the authority place. But often they're not. Often I realize that they're talking about something that they don't know anything about. Even if their, position is higher than mine, they'll be talking about a very specific skill or something that they themselves don't have a lot of experience with. And while their opinion is definitely appreciated and will be considered, it's important not to beat yourself up over their lack of experience about what they're choosing to talk about. Because I've met a lot of people in the industry who choose to pretend like they choose to talk about things as if they're an authority figure on them, but in reality, they really don't know anything about them, but they're still talking about them with a lot of confidence. And that's fine if that's how they want to, continue their careers. But it's important to realize that you don't need to base your career off of those comments. And do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I do. So one thing I would like to add on to that is find mentors. So
Yes.
with these people, there's sometimes conflicting goals, but if you've gone and found yourself mentor out of this space, then the feedback they are giving you is directly for you. They care about you. And one thing I would also add is with a mentor, you have to build a relationship where you can get that type of a feedback. If you don't know someone and you just say that, hey, give me some feedback, then it's not going to work. But if you have a relationship with someone, you've created that space where you can get that feedback and get it in a way that will actually help you grow. It's like the best thing that can happen to you.
Agreed. And those mentors really have your best interest in mind, and they're really taking time out of their lives to help you out. And that's when I think you put yourself in a potential for more growth, and you're less likely to run into people that are talking about things that they don't know anything about. That being said, so we've talked a lot about kind of receiving negative feedback, and I'd love to talk about giving negative feedback. As we grow, as we get direct reports, as we generally, are responsible for more and more things at work, it's natural to have to deliver negative feedback as well. And I'm wondering, do you have any experience with that yet?
Yes, I have worked with interns before and I've had to give feedback. The one advice I would give is keep it in a private situation, never do it in public, and have specific examples. If you give someone a vague this thing, it doesn't work. And give some specific examples. So don't give like just one example. Okay, like you saw them do this thing one time and then you instantly go and give them feedback. They're gonna get intimidated, especially because their interns are not at the same level as you. So if you've seen that happen a few times, that's when you think, okay, now is the time to give feedback. And the way you do it is, okay, hey, I noticed that you did so and I think there's a better way to do this. So, in my opinion, the best way to give it is give it in private, have a few examples, and also make sure to give ways on how they can improve.
Yeah, I love that. You've definitely kind of outlined the perfect means of giving out negative feedback. You've outlined ways that they can improve. And again, it's also up to them whether or not they choose to take this feedback. And I think it's important to be cognizant of that. In case they decide that your feedback is not something that they want to take, we need to kind of give people the space to do that, because we are out here telling people that they don't have to take negative feedback. They probably should have the freedom to do the same to your own feedback. And thank you for sharing that about the intern that you had to give negative feedback to. And I guess some of my stories along those lines, not about interns, but about my managers ask me if I have any feedback for them. That's a time for me to really be sometimes, honestly, my initial reaction at that point is to feel awkward, because obviously, as someone who is a direct report, there's some authority that your manager has over you. And being asked to give feedback in that situation is a little bit intimidating. But I think that's the perfect example to the perfect scenario to really improve your skills, and it's the perfect scenario to give you a chance to give that feedback. And Kajal already kind of outlined the perfect way to give a feedback is to, state what you're talking about, state some examples, and then state ways that someone can improve. And I think that general framework works very well in almost every scenario. And thank you again for providing it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And here's one cautious advice I would give. I hate to give this advice, but write things down. Whatever happened with you or any meeting that you've had, put it down in a piece of paper just so you know how this conversation went. Because this is a dirty trick that I have seen some managers play, is they will change the words and try to kind of trick you into feeling that, hey, you didn't exactly say this, you kind of said that, and I didn't think it was important. And then you are being, this is an uncomfortable situation, and there's probably a lot of emotions attached to it. You kind of get into this space where you are again more uncomfortable and less confident about what happened. Versus if you have your notes, you can kind of look at it and kind of reassure yourself or kind of get your head straight that, hey, this is what happened and this is how the conversation went. So maybe the manager is playing a dirty trick or they don't remember how things happened.
Unfortunately, it's so sad to hear that that happens in the industry. I have not personally dealt with it, but I have had friends and family members that have. And I'm sorry that you've also dealt with something similar, Kajal. And I agree with you. Keep a paper trail of everything. And this will really help you go forward, both, for yourself in this case scenario where things take a negative turn, but also in the case if you're receiving positive feedback and want to make a list of all the things that you've been doing well. That's something that you can use for your promotion going forward as reasons why you deserve a promotion. And it goes positive and negative, but in general, keeping that paper trail alive is so important and has so many uses going forward.
Yes, I would totally agree. And as for the positive one, stick it on your board or, on your desktop, wherever you need to. So whenever that imposter syndrome comes in, you can be like, no, look at all these 10 beautiful things people have told me about it. I'm good. I deserve to be here.
Exactly. There you go. It's a great way to combat imposter syndrome. I totally agree with you. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Kajal. I had a wonderful time.
Thank you so much, Shreya, for having me. It was really amazing, and I learned so much from you. And I also learned continuously from your Instagram and YouTube channel. Do check it out. Do subscribe to her channel. Make sure to give this video and like and show lots of love in the comment section.
Thank you so much, Kajal. And yes, please check out part 1 of this video that we did about positive feedback, and it's going to be on Kajal's channel. And like I said earlier, I will have an info card as well as all of her links in the description below. She has public Instagram accounts, public LinkedIn's, public YouTube channel as well. So please check all of those things out.
Bye.
Bye, guys.